On today's episode of Locked On Mets, we're going through Just Baseball's latest top 10 ranking of the Mets farm system. Got a special guest on as we will discuss which fourth outfielder is better for the Mets next season, Khalil Lee or Nick Plummer, JT Ginn, Matt Allan, which pitching prospect brings more to the Mets in the future. We also talk about Alex Ramirez and Jaylen Palmer, two prospects that are on the rise, young in the Mets system. A whole lot to go through. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. This is a prospect-packed episode of Locked On Mets. Let's get it started.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So as we are in the middle of a lockout, this is the perfect time to talk prospects. And today I'm once again joined by Aram Leighton. Really excited about this one. He just released his top 10 Mets prospects for Just Baseball. Aram, of course, the co-founder of Just Baseball, has his new podcast, The Call Up, where he discussed his prospects and just talked about the Mets top 10. So first of all, Aram, very happy to welcome you back on the show today.
Dude, always a blast, and was really excited to be able to talk about this system because the more I wrote about it, the more I like some of the guys in the back end. I know I've come on here and gushed about the big three at the top, but there's some fun guys throughout the top 10, so I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I think that's where I wanted to start. I want to go with the overall state of the farm system before we talk about each prospect. I've described it as a top-heavy system. You know, you just had the past 3-4 years of just gutting the farm with all of these trades for Stroman and Edwin Diaz and Robinson Cano. So now you're at this place where the Mets are lucky that they've hit on those top three guys we've talked about a bunch, but I feel like it really drops off after we get through the top 10. What was your reaction just going through the Mets farm system, where they stack up to other teams in baseball right now?
Yeah, I mean, it totally drops off. I think that's fair. But that's kind of the consensus, right? And I went into it like, okay, how much am I going to really enjoy? Again, these are all guys that I know pretty well, but when I do a deeper dive and really go in to watch full starts, I was watching like full JT Ginn starts, and when you really go back and look at Ginn, you just realize there's more wrinkles to it. Ginn's numbers on a macro scale are all right, but you see him get better and better as the season goes on, and there's a little bit more, excitement there the more you dig. I would say that this system's middle of the pack, just because it lacks that depth, especially outside of the top 10. There's some guys towards the back of the top 10 that I think have some big upside that if they hit this year, or if they really start to put it together, that system can start to jump a little bit. But with the big three on top of Mauricio, I think he's a big X factor as well, obviously, and Matt Allan, depending on when he comes back, that could kind of jolt them a little bit higher. But I'd put them right about middle of the pack of the league right now.
Hey, you mentioned you watch a lot of video. What was the one prospect at that back end that really popped on video that maybe you hadn't seen before, hadn't seen much of, and then you kind of started to really see that there was a lot of potential there?
Yeah, Jaylen Palmer. Jaylen Palmer is the answer right there. I look, there's definitely a wide range of outcomes, and we acknowledge that with a guy like Palmer, but he is also such a unique prospect in the respect that he's a guy from Flushing, which is so cool. Pop-up prospect. There's always a few of those every year, and by that just meaning they weren't on many radars, and with just a really strong finish to the high school year, or some showing out at a showcase, you get the right attention and some buzz starts to generate. With Palmer, it was a little bit of that. He was taken in the 22nd round in 2018, but for $200,000. So the Mets, saw him in their own backyard and offered him, well over a slot to try to sign him away, and they were able to do that. There was a lot of questions though, right? Like, this is a cold weather kid, growing up in the Northeast, not playing year round, that really didn't have that much experience and was toolsy, but they didn't know how he would translate. And he really swung it well in that pro debut. He seemed a lot more advanced than a lot of people would have expected. He's a great athlete. They've played him all over the diamond, which is really exciting too. He's 6'4", 200. He could add more strength. He's an above-average runner. He was really good in A-ball, struggled in high A, but 2020 was a big loss for a guy like Palmer, given that he had just only played a rookie ball and was getting his feet wet. I really like the swing. I think that there's some little tweaks he needs to make, but overall, this is a really exciting player that can be dynamic with tools across the board and a much better feel to hit than I think a lot of people expected. This is the kind of guy that could really make a major jump if it clicks for him next year.
Yeah, and I think, the numbers started to get better, I believe, as he made that switch. And also, I think when you're talking about a player that, like you said, plays all over the place, there is that potential to be a super utility type guy in the future. And I think it's good the Mets are already developing that with someone as athletic as Palmer.
100%, man. And remember, like when you have a system that lacks that depth, you got to take some flyers with guys like this. And this was a really good find, regardless, in Palmer, because he obviously, if you do a redraft, he's not going in the 22nd round. I can tell you that. Is he going in the first? Probably not. But I could tell you he's probably going top 5 rounds without a doubt. Probably even potentially top 3 rounds, depending on what his price tag would be. Obviously, that's always a big factor. But above average runner, has potential for plus power, because again, he's got a build that reminds me of Brennan Davis early on, and Brennan filled out and he could still fill out a little bit more. And the athleticism ties in too. I love his ability to work the count. He has a good feel for the strike zone. He just needs to make some slight adjustments to his swing, and I think he'll be good to go. I actually am really optimistic on this guy, despite the 31.7% K rate, because he can swipe 30 bags, he can run into some power, he has a good feel for the zone, and he like you said, he can play all over, which hedges a lot of risk. This is a guy I'm really excited about.
And I think if we're going to be talking about toolsy prospects, it's natural to move to Alex Ramirez, one of your top 10 prospects. He is a international free agent. This was his first real year, but I heard you talk on the Call Up podcast about how impressive it was that he even put up the numbers he did, considering that huge jump it is for an international player.
Totally, man. So I take everything I said about Palmer and then take it to another level, because at least Palmer played rookie ball for 2 years. Alex Ramirez signed as an international free agent in 2019, was the prize guy of their class for $2 million, and then misses out on his debut, right? It would have been 2020. That would have been his opportunity to play, and he doesn't get to do that. And it would have been either Dominican Summer League or rookie ball stateside at the complex, and he doesn't do either. And so the Mets saw enough in instructs and whatever other context that they saw him, perform, to say, hey, let's take this guy straight to low A. That is a crazy jump. You see some top end high school talent not do that, that are around the same age. So it's a testament to his approach. It's a testament to his ability to hit. And that's why, again, when people look at the numbers and they're like, oh, 96 WRC plus, he only hit 258. I really think that was a pretty impressive line. You'll see guys get blown up trying to make that jump. And, 258, 326, 384, 5 home runs, only a 31% K rate. I'm really saying only because, again, you see guys get blown up making that jump. And, I really was impressed by his ability to go to all fields. That was something that I was looking at the swing. He can let it travel. He can go gap to gap. He's got above average pull side power that I think will develop more and more. He's an above average runner who can play really good defense. That's what stood out to me. I sat down and watched way too many Alex Ramirez fly balls and just was watching him track. He's going to stick in center, in my opinion, and get better and better out there, which again takes some pressure off that bat. And he's going to be able to swipe 15, 20 bags. I really like Ramirez as a guy that could be a top 100 prospect by midseason. He seems to just check all those boxes. And the fact that he has the feel to hit that he does already hedges some of the risk of the usual international free agents. It's always a crapshoot to a degree.
Yeah, and the Mets have a farm system that needs outfield talent right now. If they're trading Pete Armstrong, there's really, we do have, 3, maybe 4 outfielders in this top 10 if you include a Jaylen Palmer or a Vientos as an outfielder, but still, it's a farm system that traded Kelenic and Pete Armstrong over the last 3 years. They need one of these guys to hit, and I think Alex Ramirez has the best chance right now in the farm system of being that type of a talent, and that's really exciting for this Mets team that desperately needs that right now.
Yeah, it's funny. When you said that, I just thought about it. And again, this is not coming from any report or any sources or anything like that, but I think about it and I'm like, okay, if I'm in the Mets position when they made that trade, and the Cubs are asking for Alex Ramirez or Pete Crow Armstrong. I like Pete Crow Armstrong. I think Mets fans are a little harsh on him because you want to
Because he's
justify the
gone.
trade. Justify the trade. Do I think he's going to be a superstar? Of course not, but I think he's better than a fourth outfielder. But Alex Ramirez has way more upside. And if I'm getting called on and asked for either of them, I'm trading Pete Crow Armstrong. So I think that can kind of give you an idea of where I think Ramirez can land, and what his upside is and his value as a prospect. He's not far off from being able to be that top 100 guy. And I bet the Mets were very keen on holding on to him. The bat speed's there too. I think there's going to be more power. He just needs to get a bit more under control, which is normal for a 19-year-old making the big jump that he made.
Let's just project this out. 2 years from now, I say Francisco Alvarez, Brett Baty, Vientos, they've all graduated. You think this guy has a good shot to one day be the Mets' top prospect?
Totally. Absolutely. Depending on if they hit an absolute home run on a draft pick in the next year or two. But you presume that they're not going to be picking very early. Even if the Mets choke at the end of the season, they're still going to be an 80-win team. They're not going to be a top 5 pick team. So unless they just have an absolute steal of a pick, I think Ramirez is probably one of the favorites to turn into that guy. If not, probably Matt Allan. I'm a big Matt Allan fan. We'll have to see how he comes back from Tommy John. But if Ramirez is putting up numbers, yeah, that's very feasible.
Well, first of all, I want to knock on wood for you for that 80-win comment. The Mets can fall apart, all right? I've seen it happen too many times. You can look on paper and say it looks great, but I don't know. It's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Makes it so much easier to stick to your resolution because Built Bars taste so good, you'll want to eat them. Unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy, Built Bars are soft and easy to chew. They come covered in 100% real chocolate. So even if you're not a fan of working out, this is at least something you can eat that tastes good and is good for you. And there's so many flavors to choose from, whether it's the coconut almond bar, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, my personal favorite, cookies and cream, salted caramel, or mint brownie. In fact, Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors. So you're going to want to check out built.com often to see what's new. And once you're there at built.com, make sure you use the promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. This draft is going to be huge for the Mets. They're going to have 6 picks in the top 100. As you said, if they're going to be a really good team moving forward, they got to maximize this upcoming draft. And one of the areas they really have to look at is pitching because, I can rattle off the names: Justin Dunn, Simeon Woods-Richardson, Anthony Kay, Kevin Smith. They've traded so many starters over the last couple of years. And that also puts a ton of pressure on the 2 prospects you have in the top 10, JT Ginn and Matt Allan. Let's start with Allan since you just mentioned him. You really like his stuff. We haven't seen much of him. He had Tommy John in May, I believe. So this next year, probably not going to see too much of him either. But he is the one prospect in the Met system that has that frontline potential.
Totally. You got it right there. I was watching some. I've seen this a few times, but every time I watch it, it's more impressive. Some ABs from spring training just before he went down, going against Schwarber, Starlin Castro, and I forget who the other guy is, but just nasty, like just disgusting. And you could see big leaguers uncomfortable with this stuff. The fastball's got so much life to it. His curveball is gross. And the changeup already flashes above average to plus. So you've got a legit 3-pitch mix there that looks to have the bones to be big league caliber. And it's just a matter of the command. And he's an athletic pitcher that I think will be able to develop that command. And to me, if it weren't for the injury, he would almost surely be in the top 100 list. He's going to be a guy that I think makes up for lost time pretty well. And I'm not really worried about long-term health. He's 6'3", 225. Again, the mechanics are pretty effortless. And the 3-pitch mix should translate. This is going to be a really, really good pitching prospect for them. And no matter what, I would not trade this guy. You got to find a way to make it happen in any other way because Allan's like your one dude, like you said right now.
Yeah, I put him as untouchable as Alvarez. Not that I would say they're the same level of prospect, but because of where the Mets farm system is, you got to hang on to Allan. And honestly, you almost have to hang on to Ginn too, because again, you just don't have a lot coming up. The Mets were lucky last year to sort of hit on Tyler McGill, but I mean, who knows how great he's going to be in the next couple of years. He was decent. So, I mean, they need some young starters. And I think when you're looking at the next 2 years, the one that could have some impact is Ginn. What do you think about him? I know that his ceiling isn't the highest, but the floor seems to be pretty high with this prospect.
Exactly, and that's good to have guys like that, especially when you're so in need of pitching prospects through your system. Ginn's a guy with a heavy fastball, low 90s, but has that sink. He gets a ton of ground balls, and that's kind of what helps the floor. He has good command of a heavy fastball at the bottom of the zone. Then he has a slider that is his best pitch. That pitch works well off of the running fastball, kind of opposite actions. And those two pitches ticked up a little bit as the year went on, and that's how he started to get more swing and miss. That was a big key for him. And that was really encouraging because you saw early on it was like pitch to contact. And as you climb, those guys sometimes will struggle because the hitters get better and the contact gets harder. He was able to rack up more swing and miss. He's being able to get that early weak contact, though, is something that I think will help him go deeper into games. I want to see him develop that third pitch a bit more. And I wouldn't mind seeing a four-seamer that he could mix in up in the zone, just because right now everything's bottom third, right? You're going heavy fastball, which is bottom of the zone. You go slider, which is typically bottom of the zone, and then a changeup, which is typically bottom of the zone. So you're allowing hitters to eliminate one region. He's able to get away with that right now. I'm interested to see how that develops. But in terms of who he is, when you're getting a ridiculous ground ball rate, I think near 60% like he is, and not a negligible amount of swings and misses, that kind of combination always gives you a really good chance to at least be a back-end starter. But I wouldn't rule out him being an average number 3. But I think more than likely he's a number 4 type, which, you can't have enough of those guys in terms of starting pitching depth.
Yeah, and I also think, you said that how things kind of ticked up for him as the season went on. He was coming off Tommy John surgery too. So, that's a big thing to note as he is now going into his first full year completely removed from it. Should have, a pretty wide leash to go, a lot of starts and build up that strength. And we'll see what happens this year. He's going to be the one pitcher I think Mets fans have to be watching throughout this year in the minors.
Yeah, he's a guy that could climb, pretty quick. And that's the thing is it was really health dependent, right? But, we saw, as you mentioned, he got better and better and healthier and more lively as the year went on. This is a guy that's probably going to start the year in Double-A next year. And if he throws well, if the Mets need somebody in a pinch towards the end of the year, it's not impossible that we see him up by the end of the year. I mean, I would lean towards 2023, but he is that polished type of pitching prospect that he's on the younger side, but I think he's got the ability to climb a little quick. So that's definitely a guy to watch for sure moving forward, and probably the only guy in the top 10, and really not much beyond that besides Jose Budo to potentially be able to chip in next year at the big league level.
There might be less football being played, but betonline.net has way more stuff to bet on this playoff season. From scores, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022, and it's not just football. BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your number one online wagering destination. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. I want to switch gears here, and I know everyone wants to hear us talk about the big names, and we will get to that. But I have been personally really excited to have this conversation with you. Nick Plummer or Khalil Lee. Okay, this is first off, the problem with this conversation is I think the two of them should be competing for the 4th outfielder job, but that's going to have to come after a trade because right now, if you look at the Mets bench, if they have an 8-man bullpen, their bench currently is going to be Guillorme, Robinson Cano, Dominic Smith, JD Davis, and Nito. I mean, that's locked in. That's not a very flexible bench. So they're going to have to like Dom is their 4th outfielder right now. And they're going to have, Canna, Marte, and, Nimmo be able to play all 3 positions. I'm already looking at you right now. You're like, that can't possibly work, right? You got to make a move so you can open up a spot for one of these guys to be a legitimate fourth outfielder.
Yeah, that's a crazy bench. And the Mets,
3 guys can't play defense. But,
no, it's an inherited situation that's very unfortunate in terms of like what in the world are you going to do with Robinson Cano? We actually talked about bounce back candidates on the Just Baseball show, and unfortunately, Dom Smith, I think he can swing it, but he's like a reverse splits guy, and he doesn't have he doesn't excel on defense, so you're not really holding on to that. Like he's not a platoon guy you really are excited about. Whereas I would actually argue that Khalil Lee and Nick Plummer, for this team specifically, could probably offer more value because both of which are great defenders in the corner, both of which are athletic. And that really helps because the bench needs that, as you mentioned. Yeah. And having that athleticism would be huge. Starting with Khalil Lee, I think people are a little bit harsh on Khalil Lee because of a weird threw him to the fire type of debut at the big leagues. And then he goes to AAA. And then I realized why he struggled so much in the big leagues. Watching him through AAA, I don't think I've ever seen a more passive hitter in my entire life. Like, he did not swing at all through the first half of the season. And you look at the strikeout rate, you're like, well, then why did he strike out so much? He literally didn't swing until he was behind in the count. His chase rate was 12% better than average. Like he was not chasing at all. It wasn't like whiffing egregiously. He was just taking so many strikes. And I don't know why. If you look, he walked a ton too. As the season went on, he got more aggressive and more aggressive. And his finish to the year was spectacular. And all it really was him just being more aggressive. Over the final 50 games, Ryan, he hit 297, 466, 593 with 10 jacks. And legitimately, the only difference was being more aggressive because his issue is he is really bad against breaking balls. And that's going to hold him back a bit from being a legit everyday player. But he demolishes fastballs. And if you demolish fastballs and you ambush them in the right spots, you can still be a really successful baseball player, especially with Lee's profile. I think he could be one of the best fourth outfielders in baseball. I think he's like an average regular potentially. Because of the power speed combination he offers and the defense. That finish was legit. He made the tweak he needed to make. I really think this guy belongs. And again, if he's a left-handed bench bat, it's not a bad option. Nick Plummer, I don't know why he picked the Mets, dude. I have no idea. Because I just look at it and I'm like, of course, I would love to play for the Mets for every non-baseball reason. But for Nick Plummer, how are you going to find time here? This team is absolutely loaded. And the only reason Nick Plummer was a minor league free agent was that he was with the Cardinals, who had an even worse situation, which was, they had their entire outfield filled, which we know. And then they have Lars Nootbaar, and then they have Juan Yepes, and they had no room for him. And his contract was up through the minor leagues because he was a late bloomer. And as a result, if you re-sign a guy that's a minor league free agent, you got to add him to the 40-man. Cardinals didn't have a spot for him. So he had his options, and he picked the Mets for whatever reason, which is interesting. Plummer, it clicked for him. Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
He had to get a lot of. That's my only guess is that because
can you give a more expensive minor league deal?
Yes.
Is there a cap? You can. There you go.
Yeah, that's what they did last year with Sam McWilliams. I'm pretty sure they did the same thing with Nick Plummer. They just outbid everybody.
Which was smart. Because Nick Plummer is the number 10 prospect in the system. Like, and people might be like, "What? That's crazy." But no, this was a very unique situation to add a legit prospect, former first-round pick in 2015, really good athlete, physical, and just he couldn't figure it out early on. Actually, no, he started well, then hit a wall. He couldn't figure it out through the higher levels. Had a big leg kick, a lot of moving parts. Quieted it all down. He's super strong and realized, hey, I don't need to have all these moving parts. Let me just have a little toe tap and let my natural strength and bat speed eat. Well, it ate this year between AA and AAA. I mean, 415 on base percentage, 15 home runs, cut the K rate down to 26%, walked 15% of the time, above average runner, above average defender in the corner, could play center field in an absolute pinch. Plummer's legit. He uses the whole field. I really like this guy too as maybe an average regular if he continues to put it together, but definitely a high-end fourth outfielder. So you've got two guys here. And I wonder if one of them ends up getting dealt. Whoever doesn't win the job ends up getting dealt here because I think both of them belong on a big league roster next year.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, going back to Khalil Lee a little bit, I have been one of those that has been a little bit harsh on Khalil Lee. If there's been two prospects, throughout the offseason doing a bunch of trade shows and stuff, if there's two prospects I've been quickest to deal, it's Ronny Mauricio and Khalil Lee. And for Khalil Lee, it's mostly because he put up those ridiculous stats in AAA, led the league in WRC plus and on base percentage. But as you said, struggles with the breaking ball. Maybe I'm still dealing with some thoughts from Lasting's millage of the past, but I see a super athletic prospect that struggles with breaking balls. And I just wonder if he's ever going to figure it out. And then you did mention that short sample size. Yes, we can't draw too much from it, but he did strike out pretty much every single at bat against the most elite pitching. So I'm a little concerned with Khalil Lee just about, could he ever be a regular? And I look at Plummer and I just think that, you said there's that big swing adjustment that really changed things for him. I just think the upside might be a little bit higher with Plummer, but they're very similar prospects.
I totally agree. And I mean, Plummer has the first round pedigree for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think Plummer is a more pure hitter. I'd say Khalil Lee has maybe a little bit more juice. His bat speed's crazy. But Plummer, seems to be on a more upward trajectory. Whereas, Lee finished really, really strong. But, I do have worries about his limitations in terms of just being able to hit day in and day out. What I do like, what does hedge some of my concern on Khalil Lee, is that he has great splits, consistent across the board. Lefties don't affect him, which is really good. That's always encouraging because you'd figure a player of his profile would actually have bad splits. So that's something I'm eager to see. I think that Plummer has a better chance to be that above average regular, but I'd say Khalil Lee, you know what you're getting right away. You can't go wrong with either. I thought both were good gets for the Mets, especially, given what they need right now. And I do wonder, I think it's going to be an open competition. It's going to be pretty fun. That'll be one of the fun storylines, I think, in spring training once it finally happens as to, who gets a look. But I think Khalil Lee could be a good trade chip. He's going to have more trade value than Plummer. And I think if you're looking to move him, the presence of Plummer could make it more justifiable.
I would say that my bottom line with this conversation is I just watched a year of Kevin Pillar. I watched the Mets trade 5 prospects in consecutive years for Keon Broxton and Jake Marisnick. I'm just happy they have some young fourth outfield options going into spring training that have that upside where, if somebody goes down, you actually have a young, fresh face that can step in there and maybe perform and exceed expectations as opposed to, Kevin Pillar, who was a nice leader, but a pretty bad at bat.
He got hit in the face and played. That was about
great story for 2 weeks. Great story.
No, I totally agree. And that's, an area where you don't need to pay more than the big league minimum for a guy. Like there's so many good prospects defensively that, are speedy that you can find. And I think the Mets just proved that. That's something that I think will start to change in Major League Baseball, which I don't know if I love it because I like to see the Kevin Pillars of the world stick around and the shelf life gets shorter and shorter for these big league vets. But for this reason, there's so much freaking talent that you can go find a Nick Plummer and plug him in as a fourth outfielder. So it definitely was a good move for him.
That's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. On tomorrow's show, we will have part 2 of this conversation with Aram Leighton, where we talk about the top 4 prospects in the Mets system. We go through Ronny Mauricio and why both of us are a little bit down on him. We talk about Mark Vientos and whether he could be the Mets DH in 2022. And then we get into the 2 crown jewels of this farm system, Brett Baty and Francisco Alvarez. You're going to want to tune into that one. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. You follow us wherever you get your podcast. You follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get your daily picks, blowout specials, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day by following Locked On Bets wherever you get podcasts.